All right, friends, welcome back to another episode here. Joey Only, Care Be Weather Dude talking. Not talking about the weather today, well, talking about, predictions that were made, whether people were in the business of predictions. As some of you know, I went to university and I studied a number of things, actually, right? So I majored in theology and philosophy and art. Those were the two things I studied in university, right? So I have some very interesting perspectives sometimes on things that you wouldn't expect. Now, people were saying the rapture was going to happen today. The rapture was going to happen today. And then other people said, it's not going to happen today because you don't know the date and time of when the Lord will return. And I'm saying, folks, that's not why the rapture is not going to happen today. The rapture is not going to happen today because it was never going to happen. Let's talk about it.
There it is. This is bad news.
My God.
Falling out right now.
Anything could happen.
Get on!
Wow. I'll watch the video later.
They try mopping this.
All right, hit like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. Joey Only, Care Be Weather Dude is back again on something a little more tangential. So when I say the rapture was never going to happen, what exactly do I mean? Okay, well, the purpose of this video isn't to either A, make people who are religious not religious. I mean, this is kind of the effect of what some of this topic had on me, though. But I'm not trying to necessarily destroy your religious worldview. I'm maybe willing to poke at it and shape it and say, hey, what you think you believe isn't biblical. It isn't real. It's not what Christians 500 years ago thought, let alone 2,000 years ago. You're believing in something that's a new, I would argue, heretical doctrine, right? And now I'm not trying to make this video to convince people who aren't religious to become religious. None of that has any bearing. The purpose of this video is a very simple conclusion, which is the earth was not made evil. Now, we could argue whether it was made or not made, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to assume a creator of some sort made planet Earth, right? That's how we're going to assume that we have some knowledge or understanding of this. We're going to assume that, even though I don't necessarily think that's true, but we're going to assume that. We're going to, for argument's sake today, we're going to talk about what is the creator's, what do we know or think we know of the creator's intention for Earth or their this is important because to me, Christianity has adopted this view of the world that the earth is evil and that we need to escape to a realm of higher forms, which is heaven, or if we're bad, we will go to a realm of lower forms, which would be Hades. Now, I use the word Hades, and I use the realm of dematerial forms, of perfection, where all the imperfection on earth is mirrored in perfection in the realm of forms. Now, why would I say the realm of forms instead of heaven? Because the realm of forms is actually Platonic philosophy. We're going to talk about all this and more today. That the idea that you escape planet Earth is not a biblical concept. The ancient Jews, the modern Jews don't believe you're going to escape Earth. They believe the kingdom of God is Earth. Earth was made good. This is the kingdom of God. And it's so dangerous in my mind to have a large segment of the world's religious population believing the earth is evil and needs to be destroyed and we need to escape it. By that extension, I argue that Christianity of today literally wants to destroy the damn world because they think that's what will bring God back or Jesus or their crazy thing. They literally want to destroy the beautiful creation that was made good. They literally think that we need to escape this awful place and float away to the realm of forms. The Bible never says this happens. It never says that there's a rapture. So I'm going to lean on AI a little bit to summarize some of the things that I learned in university from this man, Dr. Al Walters. Dr. Al Walters, who was one of the few people on earth that could read and translate ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek. What Dr. Al Walters, as well as many others who I learned from, in university were very high on was this understanding that the world was made good, that the kingdom of God in the Bible is here on earth. We're going to pretend that this is all real for argument's sake. We're going to pretend that the ancient original manuscripts are the correct ones. Now, what Dr. Al Walters and Gene Haas and Mike Goheen, some of my professors I had, were really big on was this understanding that you view the world through the context of the culture that you are in. So we are in a culture right now that has belief systems and belief constructions that we assume are ordained by God, or we assume that, well, that's just the natural order of things. Well, no, that's just how our culture is doing it. Our culture plays guitar music. Our culture makes music on computers. Our culture has big concerts. Our culture, it's like, what is normal in your cultural time? And this is important because when you say a word in this time and place, you've seen this before. Like, you have local regional jokes where you say the joke and somebody who's from 1,000 kilometers away doesn't get the meaning of it. They're like, wow, what does that mean? Like, you see this all the time. I mean, am I wearing a beanie or am I wearing a toque on my head? Well, depending on your cultural context, you'd have a different understanding of when, why, how, what the name of the thing on my head is, right? This doesn't mean that one is right, that no, it's toque. You could spend a lot of time arguing. No, it's beanie. No, it's hat. For what point? Right? So it could very well be, you like go ahead 500 years and say the beanie people win, and now everyone calls it beanie, and then you go and you're looking at some ancient manuscript and it says, and he was wearing a toque, and now you got to translate or try to understand what did that mean to those people 500 years ago? What did toque mean? And you could come up with some very crazy ideas. Okay, now why am I talking about all this? Why am I talking about all this? Because the rapture passage in the Bible does not say what you think it says. It was written to a Greek and Roman audience who had very clear cultural concepts of what those words meant. And the cultural concepts did not mean float the hell away. So we're going to talk about my professor today. Pastor Ken and I were chit-chatting a little bit. And, I was on the fence with this one because Walters had said a few things that I didn't necessarily agree with about the gay, queer community. But then Pastor Ken also showed me that Walters said he struggled with it, as in, like, he wasn't completely, committed to this, like, God rejects this. He said, I struggle with this. This is what I think, but I actually struggle with this. I don't know what the right answer is. The right answer is love people. So regardless of all that, Dr. Al Walters is a brilliant man. He's still alive. I went to university and got a chance to study underneath this beautiful man who wrote the book Creation Regained now like 40 years ago. The biblical basis for a reformational worldview. He argues that the modern interpretation of the rapture is heavily influenced by Platonic dualism that is foreign to a biblical and Jewish understanding of the world. This dualism treats the material world as inherently inferior or evil, promoting a desire to escape to a spiritual realm. Walters and others in the reformational tradition continue this with the biblical narrative of creation, fall, and redemption, where the physical world is ultimately redeemed rather than abandoned. So there's that Plato thing I was talking about. Now we gotta get clear on Plato here for a second. So why is Platonic philosophy infused with Christian ideas? When did that start? Is that a case in the early church? Like, if you look at the church, 2,000 years ago, as it was the early church, did they have this understanding of the world in this Platonic view, or did they have it more in what is the traditional Jewish view, which is you don't go to heaven, God lives there. If you went to heaven, you would cease to exist. You'd be destroyed, more or less. Heaven is there. Now, the earth was made good, but there's been this fall within, this part I don't believe at all. I mean, I can still hold on to a number of my my religious concepts. The earth fell because of Satan, and now the earth must be renewed. It must be saved. The dead will rise again. It's the kingdom of God is here on earth. That's what the ancient Jews believe. That's what the Jews of today believe. That hasn't changed. You don't float away to some other realm of forms like Platonic philosophy. Where did this Platonic philosophy come from, Joey? Well, the real guilty party, first of all, is John and Paul and their books in the Bible that are written to a Greek audience. They were written, those books specifically. You look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and they're written to a Jewish audience, and they stick with very Jewish concepts of creation, what that means. But not Paul, not John so much, because they are literally going to Thessalonica, different places in Greece and the Roman Empire, and trying to break through the cultural understandings of those people at the time. So John uses a lot of concepts, as does Paul, such as light and dark, into the darkness and into the light. And these are very Platonic understandings, right? So here with Dr. Al Walters argue that creation is good, and whether you're religious or not, I think this is good. This is the way we should look at the world. This is real spirituality. The world is beautiful. It was made beautiful. It was made good. It was made loving and green and full of life. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, the world was created good. It says that right in the very first. It repeats it. God saw it was good. And I give you all the seed-bearing plants for you to use. I used to argue that one when people like, marijuana is bad. God hates me. Like, why would God make something that he hates? Okay? The material world is not evil. It's not a mistake. The story of salvation culminates not in the destruction of the world, but in its renewal, symbolized by a new heaven and earth in Revelations 21:1. Holistic redemption. The hope of redemption in the Jewish and Christian traditions is holistic, involving the physical and the spiritual. You cannot separate your body from your soul. You are created as one. The resurrection of the body is a key tenet, showing that the material part of humanity is not discarded but redeemed and transformed. This stands in contrast to the Platonic idea that the soul is immortal and merely escapes the body at death. Joey, do you really think that the body is going to be redeemed and resurrected? Irrelevant question. Because today, for the purpose of this, we're going to pretend that ancient biblical words mean exactly what they say and say exactly what they mean. Okay, we're just going to assume that today that's all real. We're going to assume that, okay, at the end of this, the body is resurrected. Okay, the point is, when you look at the two philosophies, like the earth is bad, it must be destroyed and we float away, and compare that to the earth is good, which is a more positive impact? And this is a big reason why I walked away from Christianity, is I realized, wow, the vast majority of the Christian world believes that the earth is evil, which means they're cheering for its destruction, which means they're not in opposition to the destruction, to the environmental degradation, to war, to murder, to all the things they're supposed to be against. What's the point of justice if you don't care about the earth? It's all wrecked anyways. Who gives a shit? That's extremely dangerous. That's the kind of mentality that will literally destroy the planet. And I understood this 25, 30 years ago. I understand it today. I understand it very well, that when you just give up, you cannot have a good result. And in that way, I think Christianity is a danger to planet Earth. It's a danger to you. It's a danger to me. It's a danger to our grandchildren. It's a danger to our future. If we don't understand that the earth was made good, and you look at what's going on with MAGA and the Christian right and the lunatic, they are trying to make the end of the fucking world happen. Yes, Pastor Joey's going to just say what he actually thinks, okay? So I went to school, and I'm qualified to be your minister. I'm not a minister. I'm not going to be. But, sometimes I like to still preach. Sometimes I like to still preach, even though I'm 25 years out of that world, okay? As early Christianity developed, it encountered Hellenistic philosophies, including Platonism, which led to a synthesis of ideas that promoted dualistic thinking. They said matter is corrupt. Well, Plato taught the physical material world's fleeting and imperfect copy of a higher, eternal, and non-physical reality of forms. In this framework, matter is seen as transient or even a corrupting influence, while the spiritual realm is considered pure and true. How psychotic! So, here's a bowl of salt. Evil! It's matter! It's real! I mean, how could you believe matter is evil and then engage in any kind of a scientific worldview whatsoever, right? So one of the great things about the Dutch Calvinist tradition is I went to this Redeemer University College. I learned from people like Al Walters, and I went down the hall and learned science class. Not like we didn't learn the earth is 6,000 years old. We learned what the science and evidence says. And from our perspective in the Dutch community, it's like, well, we don't know anything. If God made the world to be 5 billion years old, we don't understand. We are small. We don't understand the universe, the plans. We don't understand how many planets are out there, what the galaxy's doing, how ancient the universe is, how ancient the rocks are, when the dinosaurs, we can look at the evidence, but we don't know the mind of God. We don't know, this idea that I always thought, why would you make your God so small? Well, the center of the universe is planet Earth, and God made it 6,000 years ago. Compare that to an idea, to a view of God that it's quite possible, and we used to say, I went to this university and was taught that, it says somewhere in the Bible, I forget where, a day is like a 1,000 years to God. It's like time moves so infinitely slow to him, he can do everything at once. Or maybe it's something reverse. But basically, was the earth made in a day, or was it made, in 1,000 years? Or it doesn't matter. It doesn't change whether or not God made Earth if we find out it's 4 billion years ago old. Don't try to squeeze God in this tiny little box when, the Almighty is capable of creating a universe with billions of planets. I'm not saying I believe that necessarily, but, it's a better view of God to imagine that God is actually bigger than you, that you actually don't know everything. They will argue the soul is trapped. This philosophy led some Christians to believe that the soul was a divine entity trapped in a mortal body, and that salvation was the soul's escape from this imprisonment to a higher immaterial plane. This is fundamentally different from the biblical concept of the body and soul being created as a united entity. So this is the origin of the rapture as escapism, escaping this evil planet. According to critics like Walters, the modern idea of a pre-tribulation rapture in which believers are secretly whisked away to heaven to escape the end-time tribulation on earth is a modern theological invention rooted in this Platonic dualism. It prioritizes escaping the physical world's suffering over the actual biblical narrative of enduring with Christ and returning with him to reclaim the earth. So the meaning of apatesis and the royal procession. This is important stuff here, because now I'm going to explain to you why in 1 Thessalonians, the passage that you think is the rapture passage does not say that at all. It didn't mean what you think it meant 2,000 years ago, because your cultural context understands it a certain way is not the same way the people 2,000 years ago understood that cultural context. The biblical interpretation, which is proper according to Walters and other scholars, restores the holistic, non-dualistic Jewish worldview through the correct understanding of Greek terms. So the word apentesis, to meet, that is used in 1 Thessalonians 4:17 is a formal term for a public royal receptions. The citizens of a city would go out to meet a visiting king or dignitary and escort them into the city in a triumphant procession. The most easily comparable idea would be, when Jesus rides in on the donkey and everyone lines up and ushers him into Jerusalem, ushers them into the gates of the city. A major general or a Roman emperor comes to your city. This is what happens. Apentesis, you go out to meet them and usher them in. That doesn't anywhere in the ancient Greek understanding or the ancient Jewish understanding does apentesis mean escape from your head and float away because the trump has resounded. None of that says what you think. And then you might be like, well, what about the book of Revelation? It never says that in the book of Revelations either. We're not going to sit around and guess what the book of Revelation says. But in this book, Thessalonians, they're very clear that in 4:17, they're talking about a formal term for a royal reception. The procession analogy there, okay? This is another one. Applying this cultural context to the passage, believers are caught up, harpazo, to meet Christ in the air. Same idea. He arrives and we usher him in, but to form a procession that returns to earth to establish this kingdom. So and again, I don't think that they literally meant that we're going to float in the air, but it's like this concept, this Roman concept, harpazo, apentesis, earthly, not heavenly destination. This interpretation stands in direct opposition to the idea of a permanent escape to a non-material heaven. It affirms the biblical focus on the redemption of the entire creation and the physical return of Christ to reign on a renewed and saved earth, okay? So, in short, Walter's analysis, in line with other biblical scholars, suggests the popular rapture concept is a theological distortion resulting in uncritical adoption of public Platonic dualism. It didn't exist 200 years ago. So what is it you're actually practicing? Are you practicing biblical Christianity? You don't actually seem to understand, I think, a lot of you. What did people 2,000 years ago actually think? If you said a word like apentesis to people, what did that mean to them then? That's what the book actually says then. That's their concept that they put into the words of their book. And then sometime down the road, somebody that comes along is like, well, I don't understand the cultural context. This word means, and they mistranslate the word, especially when you're translating from translations of translations. You're translating from the King James. When did the rapture philosophy begin? Let's answer that before we go. Rapture theology in its modern pre-tribulation form was introduced in the 1830s by John Nelson Darby of the Plymouth Brethren, who popularized the idea of a catching up of believers before a period of tribulation. While the underlying concept of a snatching away is based on the Greek word harpazo from 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17, Darby developed the specific doctrine of a pre-tribulation rapture, which was further spread by the Scofield Reference Bible and popularized in culture by the Left Behind book series. Key figures: Margaret MacDonald, a Scottish woman whose vision of the end times is sometimes cited as an influence for Darby's ideas. Darby himself, an Irish theologian who founded the Plymouth Brethren and credited with formulating and teaching the specific doctrine of a pre-tribulation rapture. Scofield Reference Bible, the widely circulated study Bible, helped to popularize dispensationalism, a theological system that incorporates the pre-tribulation rapture across the United States. The Late Great Planet Earth, 1970, Hal Lindsey's best-selling book, further propelled rapture-related theology into evangelical popular culture. The Left Behind series from 1995 to 2007, this novel and movie franchise brought the concept of the rapture and surrounding dispensationalist theology into mainstream popular culture. These things didn't exist. You could go back 150 years and a lot of people wouldn't even understand what you meant if you said rapture. It existed back then, but it has become popular over time. It's become popular since, and these are the examples of things that really were the propaganda methods to spread this poisonous idea that the earth is fucking evil, and it's not. The earth is not evil. Whether you believe in Christianity or you don't believe in it, the earth is not evil. It's never been evil. It's always been beautiful. It's always been good. It's always been this life, giving thing we have, this tiny blue orb floating around the darkness of space. It's so special. It's so wonderful. It's so, and we're willing to destroy it for money. That's what's going on. When you're like, well, we need to do something about climate change, and you're like, well, we're all just going to float away from this evil earth anyways. What does it matter? Just get money while we can. You think that's Christianity? The specific view of the pre-tribulation rapture was popularized by Darby. The rapture will occur before a 7-year period of tribulation, the second coming of Christ. And then there's dispensationalism, a theological framework that divides biblical history into different dispensations or periods within the pre-tribulation rapture being a key element. So no, the rapture was not going to happen today. Never was going to happen today. No reality, in your own religious tradition. These people are snakes. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. They're using you. They're playing on your fear. They're playing on your ignorance. They're playing on your stupidity. They're playing on your hate. They're playing on your greed. And they're suckering you along into thinking ridiculous, evil, criminal things like the earth is wrong, the earth is evil. And that is one of the main reasons I said at some point, wow, I just learned from Dr. Al Walters that Christianity is full of shit. And I couldn't go back. That's the show for today. Hit like, share, subscribe. Unless you're floating away to some other friggin' realm.